Picture this. The kingdom of Shou is going through some major political changes. The young Emperor Gaojun usurped the corrupt Empress Dowager who seduced his father, the previous emperor, and killed his mother, one of the previous emperor's concubines. On the path to right the wrongs of the empress, he stumbles upon a mysterious consort, one who was isolated and had no obligation to perform nighttime duties. The Raven Consort's purpose is an enigma. Her palace is isolated, and she had no lady-in-waiting or servants. With her duties related to the guidance of lost souls and vanquishing demons, and reasons she was bound to the palace, the emperor desired to understand her and help her find freedom. Can he save her? Let's find out in this tale called Raven of the Inner Palace. One of the palace guards yawns because it was yet another boring night, until a sudden explosion took place. No longer boring because both the entrance guards were assassinated. As the leader of this coup, Xia Gaojun marched into the inner palace, having his men eliminate any additional guards. As he entered the room of the wicked Empress Dowager, she scoffed, referring to him as the ruined prince, proclaiming a man of low birth such as himself was not welcome here. She told him to grovel and beg for his life, but was surprised when she commanded her soldiers to kill him. They all bowed towards Gaojun instead. Walking forward and drawing his blade, Gaojun thought back to his mother and father and the loss he endured to come to this point, as he pointed his blade at the empress and swung. In the country of Shou, the people praised glory and blessings onto their new emperor at his young age of 23. Deep within the inner palace, there lives a consort known as the Raven Consort. She holds a special position. Despite her title of consort, she does not perform any nightly duties. Although she lives in the palace, she has no contact with the emperor, and it is said that she can use mysterious arts. Approaching her palace, Xia notices it has no lights at night, something his attendant, Wei Qing, surmises is because the lanterns aren't lit. Everyone is probably too scared to approach because they say a monster bird with a golden glow appears here and supposedly attacks any who approach. Wei tries to dissuade the emperor from meeting the Raven Consort because some say disaster befalls those who meet her. Then, a glowing light suddenly burst from the door, and it was a golden chicken that Wei managed to apprehend. Gaojun told Qing not to strangle it, and that's when a voice spoke.
Put Xing down, you lowlife. This is a precious monster bird. If you kill it, you will never atone. You had best be careful.
The Raven Consort, Liu Shouxie, plainly asked what the emperor wanted, and despite Wei wanting to scold her for being rude, the emperor had a favor to ask. Presenting a jade earring, he heard it was her duty to handle death curses, exorcism, and find that which is lost. However, Shouxie did not accept any requests for prices that could not be paid.
If you curse someone, dig 2 graves. Your life for a death curse. Your assets for an exorcism. The price to find something lost is a consultation.
Gaojun desired to know who the jade earring belonged to, but Shouxie refused, simply putting if he wanted to know, he only needed to ask everyone else until he found out. Because if he didn't, either there was some reason why he couldn't, or he was looking to waste her time. She found neither reason to be satisfactory justification for her services. Her continued directness of speaking angered Wei, but Gaojun told him it was fine. Gaojun had heard the Raven Consort was a female hermit, or perhaps a ghost. But approaching her and holding her hand, he knew she was human. He asked her name, and she shyly looked away while answering. He thought Liu Shouxie to be a fine name, making her blush. Then, when her sleeve came down, and Gaojun noticed the flower on her arm, Shouxie pulled away and gasped. The Raven Consort pulled on the flowers from her hair, and blowing into it, a pink flurry of petals engulfed the emperor and his attendant. The two then suddenly found themselves outside. The next day, Gaojun was researching more about Shouxie, learning the Raven Consort was the descendant of the priestess who served the goddess Wulian Nyang. Past emperors who deeply admired the Raven Consort's mysterious arts hid her within the inner palace in order to monopolize her powers, and gave her the rank of empress as a special exception. Or so the history books say. Xing squawked and squabbled incessantly, making Shouxie sigh because he never seemed to do what she asked when she wanted quiet time. She opened her doors and seeing Gaojun and Wei again, she reminded them she wouldn't be granting their request. However, Gaojun had a gift for her.
You think such a thing will sway me? I have no need for money nor ornaments. Take your gift and go.
With Wei bringing in some delicious baozi buns, Shouxie gasped in desire. These buns were filled with red bean paste and lotus seeds, freshly made and steaming. Gaojun heard they were her favorite, but was only willing to give them to her if she heard what he had to say. She swallowed her pride and said,
If all you wish to do is talk, I will listen.
Gaojun inquired more about the earring, still wanting to know who dropped it. Shouxie had no idea, since a mere object didn't provide enough context to find a person. So, Gaojun changed the question. He had seen a ghost possess the earring once, wearing one in its left ear. He wanted to know who the ghost was. He didn't believe she could refuse, since she already ate all the buns. She then looked away and blushed, making Gaojun comment on her cuteness. Hearing this, she quickly stood up. Grabbing one of her flowers, it emanated a mystic glow, and she blew the pink light into the earring. Seeing the ghost Gaojun described clawing at its neck, Wei got sick. This ghost clearly was in no position to speak, so Shouxie dismissed it. They learned the ghost was a consort from the current dynasty, perhaps belonging to Gaojun's grandfather or father's inner palace while they were still alive. Shouxie figured she was either strangled or hung, and that her unfortunate death must be the reason her spirit haunts the earring. Gaojun wondered if something could be done. It is said that people go to a paradise beyond the sea when they die, but because the consort has become a ghost, she cannot. Instead, grounded here to eternal suffering. Will you save that ghost?
Why do you care so much about a ghost?
I pity it. Later, Shouxie dressed more casually as a part of handling the request, because she was going out into the public and didn't want to be recognized as a consort. Sneaking into another palace, she overheard the court lady in blue, Li, harassing Jiujiu about sewing the garment she had in her hand. Shouxie scolded Li, questioning if she was an incapable court lady, making her leave. This relieved Jiujiu, since Li had always caused trouble for her with unreasonable demands. We learned Li was a court lady of the Imperial Writing Office. Her seeing Jiujiu was only an afterthought, as she was mostly here to handle letter exchanges with eunuchs. Hearing Shouxie was from the Raven Consort's palace, Jiujiu was surprised. She thought the Raven Consort didn't have court ladies. Jiujiu then began yapping on and on about rumors she heard, such as the Raven Consort being over 100 years old, had mysterious powers, and could predict the weather. But luckily, Shouxie was able to ignore all of this, by inferring she had to keep that info a secret. While the two got to work together, Jiujiu spoke of what she's heard since being in the palace for over a year, especially in regards to how the current emperor, Gaojun, was previously disinherited by the Empress Dowager, who supposedly killed his birth mother. She had even forced him to live in confinement for years. But Gaojun didn't give up, having allied himself with officials and eunuchs, who eventually helped him overthrow the empress. They say Gaojun's mother was a beautiful woman. Jiujiu heard that's why he was so handsome as well, although Shouxie didn't think too much of him. Shouxie then asked about any other consorts that died unfortunate deaths, and we learned there was one who was executed for adultery, one who was poisoned, and the consort who did the poisoning self-ended by hanging. This one was of particular importance to Shouxie. Another court lady mentioned the one who was hanged to be Ban Yingnu, a lower-ranking consort who was an ephemeral beauty. Ban lived in the palace of the third consort, but the third consort was a young, beautiful woman who was the daughter of an important man. She was apparently quite the arrogant and insolent woman. One day, she died from ingesting poisoned fish broth. After searching Ban's room, they found a poisonous stellara in a chest, and that night, Ban self-ended using her own shawl fastened to a beam in her room. Shouxie wondered if Ban truly killed the third consort. Someone else could have easily poisoned the broth, to which the court lady explained that's exactly how everything works around here. Even when the emperor's birth mother was killed, officially, a lady-in-waiting was framed for the crime and executed. Awful, but because of that, the palace ladies were never short of gossip material, and this saddened Shouxie, because death was just entertainment here in the inner palace. But what else could a court lady do, since they were forbidden from leaving? Shouxie didn't find ghosts scary, just sad. This reminded Jiujiu of a rumor she heard about Gaojun's grandfather from the Yandi clan. Visiting consorts' palaces, he'd keep the lanterns on all night long. He said it was because ghosts came out at night, ghosts of the previous dynasty. The Yandi exterminated every last member of the previous Luan dynasty, the elderly, the women, and even tiny little babies, all indiscriminately. They say the ghosts shake loose their beautiful silver hair, a signature of the Luan family, and continuously spout curses. Xia's grandfather was apparently haunted by them until the day he died. With Shouxie thinking it was time to head back, Jiujiu gave her some buns as a reward for helping out. Staring at them in her place, she remembered the previous Raven Consort telling her,
Live a solitary life. The Raven Consort must desire nothing.
She then ate the buns, somewhat down. In the Emperor's office, Wei questioned why Gaojun didn't execute the Empress Dowager, despite her being a nasty woman who seduced the previous emperor and pushed him into disinheritance. Gaojun wanted concrete evidence of her wrongdoings. And even though Wei told him he could just fabricate it, Gaojun was serious because if he did that, he'd be no different than her. He thought back to when the Empress had goaded his mother into dancing. He had snuck into the palace to find her, and all the consorts were cackling as the other dancers tripped her over and embarrassed her. This brought him to tears. He asked his mother why she endured such mockery, but she simply told him not to come here anymore. And even though he was distraught, he complied. She eventually died from the poisoned fish broth. A man explained to him she never resisted harassment because she was afraid he'd be harmed. But when the Empress passed by, seeing Gaojun, she gave a nasty smirk. From then on, he vowed to steal the stones she stands on and leave her no means of escape. He wanted her sentence to be defined by both law and logic. He knew the day would come and would never forgive the woman who cruelly murdered his mother. Stepping out to a small pond, Shouxie washed her hair, which revealed to be a shimmering white, like that of the Luan clan, surprised to see Emperor Gaojun had discovered her secret. For the Yandi, the loathsome silver hair was a signature of the Luan dynasty. The emperor had called for the beheading of everyone who possessed it. Despite Shouxie's mother covering the silver shine, she told Shouxie to never forget her true hair color was a blessing. With the two smiling in the mirror, the women screamed, and as the Yandi soldiers stormed in, Shouxie's mother ran out with her and told little Shouxie to hide and no matter what she heard, to not move from this spot. Shouxie called for her mother, but as soon as she left, all Shouxie could hear was the blood-curdling screams as the mother begged the soldiers to stop beating her. The next day, Shouxie wandered, looking for her mother, astonished, happy to finally find her, only to be distraught, realizing it was just her head placed on a table to set an example. From that moment on, Shouxie learned about the darkness and cruelty of living in their world. She ran away seeing the emperor, and immediately he and Wei picked up on the fact she was from the Luan clan. She was panting, out of breath, falling against her palace doors. Then, a knock on the door startled her. It was Gaojun, telling her she forgot her wash tub and that he was leaving it here. He recommended she dry herself, otherwise she'd get sick, and he denied ever seeing her on this night. Jiujiu arrived, nervous and somewhat hesitant to the Yangming palace. Entering the doors, Xingxing jumped at her, dancing as she awed at his beautiful golden feathers. Shouxie walked towards Jiujiu, remarking that her chicken has taken a liking to her, and Jiujiu was mind-blown discovering Shouxie to be the Raven Consort. She practically started begging for forgiveness, since she was so informal during their previous interaction, but Shouxie didn't mind at all. She actually wanted Jiujiu to become her lady-in-waiting. For Jiujiu, this was her first time wearing such fine clothing. However, it wouldn't be for long since Shouxie only appointed her as an excuse to peruse the register of court ladies. She's now learned that the personal attendant of Consort Bond's name was Su Hongqiao. Spotting Li, Jiujiu hid behind Liu's back. Liu then remembered Li exchanged letters with a particular eunuch from the Feiyan Palace. There's apparently another court lady at the Office of Books and Writing Materials that's giving her this grunt work. Entering the wash area, we learned being a worker here is equivalent to being banished within the inner palace. The two girls suddenly got surrounded by threatening men, so Shouxie used her powers to try to make an escape. But, oh no, they got Jiujiu. And as the assailant goes to strike her, Wu Hao comes to her rescue. And as another man tries to stab him in the back, Wen Ying takes him out. Wen was instructed to protect Shouxie by Wei Qing, but not Guo Hao, so he took off. We learned those men were most likely working under the Empress Dowager who tried to keep her secrets under wraps. Jiujiu was both shaken and grateful, scared dealing with the attempted assault, but thankful a consort like Shouxie protected her. Even though she could have been stabbed herself, no one had ever been that nice to her. She wanted to continue on with Shouxie and see this through. Finally meeting with Su Hongqiao, Ban Yingnu's previous lady-in-waiting. However, They'd quickly learned there was little point to talking with her because her tongue had been cut out. Presenting the jade earring, they infer that she can still write to explain, so they bring her over to the Yiming Palace. That night, Shouxie explains to Gaojun that the earring belonged to Ban Yingnu and that she was accused of poisoning the third consort and self-ended. She then steps inside to read what Su had written, and it read, "They'll kill me if they discover I can write, so I pretend that I cannot." As Su continues to write, Shouxie is astonished to hear the culprit is none other than the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager killed the third consort because she became pregnant. Her father was a senior vassal, but not one of the Empress's men. The Empress Dowager bribed Ban Yingnu's chambermaid into planting stellaria in a chest in her room. Su had witnessed it all. However, she also did as she was told because they threatened to kill her family back home. She felt remorse for letting Ban die. Ban never self-ended. She was killed so she could be framed for the murder of the third consort. Then the chambermaid was killed. But killing a lady-in-waiting like Su would attract too much attention, so they cut her tongue, making her unable to speak. Now looking at the earring, Shouxie realizes it's Ban Yingnu's ghost that haunts it. She treasured that earring because her betrothed back home had the other, but apparently she gave it away to someone. Gaojun then entered, wanting to know the name of the eunuch who cut Su's tongue. It was a man named Guxuan, one of the Empress Dowager's shadows. Gaojun was so glad he didn't kill the Empress back then, now having all the proof he needed. They then met Guo Hao, who was Ban Yingnu's betrothed. He was frantic because he knew Ban would never kill anyone nor self-end. They had been betrothed to one another since they were little, but ever since she entered the inner palace, he wasn't even allowed to see her anymore. The night before she headed to the capital, she gave him one of her earrings as a memento. It was the only keepsake he had of her, but he lost it. Luckily, Gaojun had found it. Shouxie had then explained how she'd been dragged into this because Gaojun wanted to save Ban's ghost, who continued to suffer bearing a grudge within the earring. Guo Hao then got up, asking to see Ban's ghost, and despite knowing she'd be unrecognizable at this point, Shouxie obliged, using her powers to summon Ban. But sadly, Guo Hao couldn't even touch her. Then, Gaojun presented the other jade earring. He received it having met Ban at the inner palace during his mother's funeral. At that time, she had told Gaojun she'd given the other to someone very important to her. She had said she felt connected to him when she wore the one she had, and must have told Gaojun this to distract him because he was crying. Gaojun felt terrible because he asked her to give him that earring. He was jealous that the person she loved was still alive, and she gave it, smiling. It wasn't because he was the crown prince. She did it to comfort a crying child. He regretted taking it, but lost the opportunity to return it. He'd always wanted to return it someday. Presenting both earrings to Guo Hao, his prayers revitalized his beloved's spirit. He couldn't touch her, so she touched him and smiled in tears. She told him she loved him as her soul reached salvation in the life beyond. With everything finally solved, Guo Hao thanked them all and reported he overheard court lady Xingxi and a eunuch plotting to poison Gaojun. Xingxi is the lady-in-waiting who served the Empress and tripped his mother back in the day. They then searched the Fei'an Palace and found all evidence of the attempt to assassinate Gaojun. The Empress's shadow, Guxuan, even admitted to these things and the murders of the third consort and Ban Yingnu under her orders. Before execution, Gaojun asked the Empress if she had any last words. And hearing she enjoyed watching his mother dance, Gaojun was astonished, but firm, announcing all the crimes she committed. As he called for her end, she cursed him with mysterious words. That night, Gaojun went to visit Shouxie to reward her for her assistance, throwing her a baggie of dried jujubes, which she quite enjoyed. Thinking about how her room smelled strongly of incense when he first visited, he wondered if it was to conceal the smell of hair dye. Shouxie questioned why he turned a blind eye to her secret, to which he responded he had no need to kill her, provided she had no reason to kill him. He actually wondered if she hated him, or perhaps his grandfather or father instead. But no. If there's anyone she hates, it might have been herself, because she watched her mother die, and spilling her thoughts created a somber mood. Gaojun then handed her a little goldfish, as a symbol of his promise not to kill her. He had regrets also having watched his own mother die. His mother endured all manner of humiliation to protect him. Back then, he didn't understand that. Today, that all came to closure, but now he learned there was no right way to kill someone. All that remained was the regret he couldn't save anyone, and he had been consoling himself with the thoughts of revenge against the Empress. Looking at Shouxie, he asked her to become his consort. She backed away, wondering if he was out of his mind. He might have been, especially not having slept well lately. Dismissing his words, she uttered,
I don't have time for this. Get out of...
But he touched her face, saying when he saw her by the lake, he thought, this must be what a goddess looked like. He'd never seen anything so beautiful. Gaojun came closer and closer to Shouxie, falling over and passing out. She tried to wake him, to no avail. So instead, she used her powers to dust petals around him and grant a peaceful respite. I can't be at peace if you don't like this video and subscribe to my channel. Why? Because here at my Shoujo Weekly, I've got plenty of interesting stories to share with you involving drama, romance, and mystery. I even spend time losing sleep trying to figure out how to get Chinese names right. I still probably got them wrong, but hey, while I might not always be an expert, I think you should subscribe for the effort. In her youth, Shouxie was sold to a household as a slave, beaten constantly for her inability to clean efficiently. Then one night, while taking out the firewood, a golden arrow landed nearby her, and suddenly she found the people bowing at her feet. She was summoned to the Yangming Palace, where the golden arrow was returned to Xingxing, and the then Raven Consort told her she'd be living here from now on. On another day, she was greeted by the Duck Consort, Yun Huanyang. Being ranked the second consort, she'd be right below the Empress herself, if one was still alive. Huanyang came to inquire about Shouxie's relationship with the Emperor. However, Shouxie didn't quite understand it herself, with Gaojun often visiting briefly and leaving just as fast. There are apparently many within the inner palace who believe he requested a death curse from Shouxie upon the Empress Dowager. Huanyang assumes it stems from jealousy, since His Majesty rarely visits his consorts, but makes frequent trips to her. This visit was important for Huanyang. She desired to learn more about Shouxie's character because it's her responsibility to look after the inner palace. So now ready to leave, she plans to return in the night for a request. Jiujiu gushed over Huanyang, saying,
The flower princess is so pretty. She always keeps a flower whistle in her sash, even though it's probably bad luck.
Shouxie wasn't too familiar with its meaning. So, Jiujiu explained that people hung them from their eaves at the end of winter to mourn those who passed away that year. They say the dead return on winds signaling the arrival of spring, and blow the whistles. She won't tell anyone why she wears one though. That night, with Shouxie getting a drink of water, Jiujiu scolded her, because as a lady-in-waiting, it was her duty to serve her consort. The two bickered a little, since Shouxie had managed by herself prior to having anyone serve her, making Jiujiu feel unneeded. Then suddenly arriving, Gaojun commented that it was getting lively in here. He saw no issues with Shouxie keeping both Jiujiu and Hongqiao at her palace, but she did, and refused to elaborate why she couldn't keep them, even blaming Gaojun for getting her into this mess. However, with her opening the door and telling him to leave, Huanyang showed up, ready to make her request. She presented Shouxie a flower whistle made for someone she loved. She waited around the whistle often, yet it never made a sound. She wondered why her dead lover who passed 3 years ago wouldn't return to her. So, she's come to request that Shouxie summon him. Shouxie agreed, explaining she could only summon a soul from paradise once. After writing down his name and blowing her powers into it, nothing happened. Shouxie explained his soul wasn't in paradise. Perhaps he was still alive. If not that, there must be some other reason she could not summon his soul. Shouxie inquired as to how he died. Gaojun explained that 3 years ago, that man was appointed to the city of Shoujo and lost his life in the uprising that took place there. At the time, an odd faith known as the Yue doctrine had become popular. A man named Yue Shenwang was revered as a living god. Allegedly, he could predict the future and accurately guess the past, but he wasn't a practitioner of magic. Shouxie requested to learn more about Shenwang, so Gaojun called for Don Hai, his intelligence scout who had made some good connections in Shunzhou with some merchants. He was going to look into it. The next day, Shouxie and Jiujiu arrived at Huanyang's palace. Being offered a flower, Shouxie placed it in Jiujiu's hair, making her blush in gratitude. And Shouxie was just as flustered receiving one from Huanyang. Shouxie came to learn more about Huanyang's past lover. She described him to be like boiled water that had cooled, warm and gentle. Though he could be passionate at times, he never used that heat to burn anyone. But boiled water is only the perfect temperature for a short time, since he was gone before she knew it. Holding back her tears, She wondered if his soul was perhaps lost in Shoujo. He was quite careless at times. Huan Yang then asked what Shouxie thought about Gaojun, since he seems to have changed quite a bit since meeting her.
I never know what he's thinking. He's expressionless, unsociable, and rude.
Hearing this made Huan Yang giggle.
He feels like winter, silent and still. And though there is warmth in the sunlight, something hides in the shadows.
Huan Yang described Emperor Gaojun to have laughed and become upset freely as a child. He stopped expressing his emotions because of his mother's death and what happened with a eunuch named Ding Lan. She then explained Gaojun had made the flower whistle for her. He's quite skilled with his hands and had studied under Ding Lan, whom he loved very much. But Ding Lan died a horrible death. She told Shouxie she mustn't mention his name in Gaojun's presence. Then suddenly, Shouxie looked over, noticing a court lady was ominously watching over them. Back at Shouxie's place, Gaojun and his servants reported Yu Shanwang, the man once revered as a god, had been dead for a while now. He was sentenced to whipping and banishment from the province, but he died before he received 100 lashes. He often prophesied finding lost items, conjured delusions, and performed transformations. No one knows if they were real or fake though. Some say there was even more than one Yue Shanwang, because sometimes he seemed like another person, as if he was possessed. There was also a rumor of him being a member of the previous dynasty. In the evening, a court lady from Huan Yang's palace requested for Shouxie's help. Apparently, an item they received from a merchant the other day had gone missing, along with another court lady named Ye Qingcheng. Supposedly, Qingcheng would never do something audacious such as steal, but lately, she seemed like a different person. And hearing this made Shouxie remember Don Hai's description of Shan Wang, seeming like he was another person at times. Being shown to her room, Shouxie worked her magic to summon a raven, and followed it outside, finding Ye Qingcheng with the stolen item. However, a twisted man's voice answered back. Shouxie asked the possessed girl if she was associated with Yue Shanwang, since she somehow tamed Shouxie's raven, a feat no ordinary person could do. Also, judging by the characters on the jar, it was clear the person possessing Qingcheng was a sorcerer. Accepting he'd been found out, Luan Bingyue introduced himself, acknowledging he was from the same white-haired clan as Shouxie. Bingyue was surprised she'd managed to survive, as he was captured and beheaded. But inside the jar he was holding was the soul of Huan Yang's lover. Souls that die far away from their homelands become lost. So, Bingyue gathers them up and seals them inside the jar. He at first thought to make them his servants, but found another use for them. He was willing to give Huan Yang's lover back, as long as Shouxie honored his request. But if she didn't, he planned to kill this court lady he was possessing and flee, making it so her lost soul would never return. With him pressing the blade in her neck, Shouxie begged him to stop, and that's when Wen Ying tossed a rock, knocking the blade out, saving the day again. And finding her opportunity, Shouxie shot her magic at the jar and freed the souls inside, taking Huan Yang's lover's soul, which transformed into a comb. Bingyue's soul then manifested before them, snarkily asking why Shouxie chose to remain cooped up in the inner palace, since she had more than enough power to take everything. Then, he disappeared. She then asked if Wen Ying heard that, but he denied it. Later, Shouxie presented the lover's soul back to Huan Yang, and she embraced its warmth, describing it like the cooled boiled water she said before. She wished the soul would stay a while longer, but he brushed past her cheek and blew into the whistle, causing her to tear up. He then left her, heading to paradise, and would return once a year to her whistle every spring. As a gift, Huan Yang gave Shouxie this dress for saving her lover's soul. Shouxie asked why she was at the inner palace, and Gaojun explained Huan Yang had nowhere to go after her lover died. She had no choice but to marry into another family, but she didn't want to, so he granted her a consort position, and he was certain Shouxie would make great companions with her.
The Raven Consort does not gossip over tea with other consorts. I was empty once. It was the previous Raven Consort who filled that void. She took me in after I lost my mother and was sold by slave traders. She said, "From now on, you must live here." She said that was my destiny. She gave me a new name and taught me how to do everything, such as how to read and write, how to speak as I do, and how to use the Raven Consort's arts. She made me promise I would never take pity on those who made requests of the Raven Consort.
Gaojun questioned why. to which Shouxie responded it would tear her apart, and her emotions could cloud her judgment. Gaojun acknowledged while that might be true, Huan Yang regarded Shouxie as the kindest person she ever met. Hearing this made Shouxie gasp, looking down as if she were still trying to reject the warmth of these relationships. She then had Gaojun leave, and told him not to come back, since the Emperor and Raven Consort's relationship was like oil and water. On a particular morning, Shouxie wondered why a little birdie was so worried. Xing squawked at it, as the little birdie flew off and dissipated. It was actually the ghost of a skylark that hadn't crossed over yet. Jiujiu surmised it must have belonged to the skylark princess, who unfortunately died having slipped and fallen into a lake. Jiujiu felt bad for it, wandering, unable to return to its princess, and requested Shouxie grant it salvation. Reaching the disheveled Kanglang Hall, Shouxie was jump-scared by Wan Ying, who was here on orders from the Emperor's attendant, Wei Qing, to protect her. Shouxie explained with the Skylark Princess's bird having become a ghost, it must feel some attachment to this world, so she must remove the cause if she wants to send it to paradise. At the nearby lake where the princess supposedly died, she couldn't sense any ghosts nearby. Perhaps the princess had moved on without issue. However, Wen Ying pointed out some fresh flowers left as a prayer, most likely by someone close to her. Hearing the giggles of women nearby, Shouxie decided to ask around, immediately scaring a court lady. The court ladies explained the Skylark Princess had died so long ago that they had no knowledge of her. They had heard Emperor Gaojun's late mother, the Crane Consort, used to deliver food to her sometimes, so the only one still alive who might have knowledge about the princess would be the current Crane Consort's lady-in-waiting, Yang Xinyang. Due to some events, Jiujiu got upset because Shouxie tried to give her some hairpins the Emperor had given her. So Jiujiu went out to complain to a little boy because her consort is too self-sufficient, leaving her little purpose as a lady-in-waiting. The little boy helped Jiujiu reflect on the matter though, making her think she might have been too harsh. Sitting in her room attempting to carve a bird, Shouxie wondered why she was trying to please Jiujiu. She thought back to how the previous consort had told her not to keep anyone, and thought once again she was probably right. She should send Jiujiu back to the palace she was serving before. Looking at her failed attempt to make a bird, Gaojun thought it to be a fat lizard. Shouxie wanted to make a bird capable of flying across the sea, so Gaojun decided to carve a cave swallow, since they were strong flyers. He opened up about how he was taught to carve by Ding Lan, a eunuch who was close to his father's age when he was younger. He then presented her with what he came here for, paper bubble candy, and it really pleased her, even though she denied it. She decided to ask advice about upsetting Jiujiu, wondering if he ever gave gifts to Wei Qing. We learned the Emperor had once given a sword to him, which he truly treasured. She just couldn't understand why when she offered the hairpins to Jiujiu, she got upset. Gaojun explained that not all ladies-in-waiting worked for gifts. It probably offended her. He was also getting upset with Shouxie, who knew little about the subtleties of relationships, and he couldn't believe she tried to give away something he gave to her. He told her not to give away the fish he gave her, since Ding Lan had given it to him. Taking his leave, he promised to finish the bird by his next visit, and that if she wanted to gift Jiujiu, it should probably be with food. The next day, Gaojun decided to meet with Shui Yuyang, the Ministry of Works and childhood friend of the previous Raven Consort, Li Niang. Gaojun was trying to gather information about the Raven Consort. He was curious about when Bing Yue's ghost had mentioned the Raven Consort could have everything if she desired, and what it meant for the Raven Consort and the Emperor to be like oil and water. He wondered if Yuyang knew secrets he didn't know. However, Yuyang only told Gaoshun to ask her himself. Seeing Yang Xinyang placing her flower offering, Shouxie finally found her. With Xinyang coughing, Shouxie wondered if she was sick. But no, it was more like a seasonal allergy. Shouxie called the ghost of the Skylark to explain she'd like to send it to paradise. She wanted Xinyang to tell her more about the princess. Xinyang felt remorse letting the princess die all alone. The princess was sickly and sometimes bedridden, but never given any medicine, because requesting them from the court physician required the Empress Dowager's permission. When she felt well, the princess grew vegetables and flowers in the garden, and Xinyang occasionally helped her. The princess was kind to her. When Xinyang entered the inner palace and was missing her family, the princess consoled her. But one day, she had gotten into an argument with the princess, and the Skylark came and chirped something at her like it wanted something. She felt something was off, but because of the previous day's events, she was too ashamed to face the princess. Before she knew it, the skylark was gone and the princess was found here. Every day, she thought about how things might have been different if she'd listened to that skylark. She wished she could have at least held her hand before she died. She pleaded for Shouxue to save the skylark because she felt like it was the princess herself. Later, Gaojun arrived on the scene, having heard she was looking into the skylark princess. Shouxue commented on the flowers that Xinyang had left. They were sweetbriar, something the princess herself had apparently grown in her garden. The princess had also grown honeysuckle and chrysanthemums, all ingredients for medicines. She had probably been growing medicinal flowers and drinking infusions made from them in attempts to cure herself. She believes the reason she fell into the lake to be the fritillaria flowers growing by the water's edge, which are normally used to make cough suppressants. She must have slipped trying to harvest them. She must have grown them for Xinyang, since she had a seasonal cough. Shouxue then asked for the bird carving, and with it prepared, she summoned a gale, telling the skylark to follow and let the princess know Xinyang still cared for her. She was confident the swallow would lead the skylark to paradise. That's why she needed a bird that was a strong flyer. Taking her leave, she muttered her thanks to Gaojun, who made a good bird. Gaojun gasped, grabbing her hand. He thought of her thanking him to be novel, delightful even, as though a stubbornly aloof cat was finally showing him some affection. Shaking his hand off, Shouxie denied having even a shred of affection for him. She continued trying to leave, but he stopped her. Wanting Shouxie to reconcile with Jiujiu, he presented her a carving of a wallow tit, because it was just like Shouxie, small and sweet. The man who taught him to make these was a cheerful and amicable man. He loved Ding Lan. Lan had one day gone out to pick some hollyhock for him, and that was the last time Gaojun had seen him alive. The Empress Dowager knew exactly how much he depended on Ding Lan, so she tortured him to death. His corpse left a tattered rag. While Gaojun was certain Shouxie had her reasons to turn people away, he suggested she reconcile with Jiujiu, because it'll be too late once she's gone. Returning back to her palace, things were still a little awkward with Jiujiu, but Shouxie apologized. She had heard other consorts gave gifts to their ladies-in-waiting, and she did the same, thinking it'd make her happy. This brought Jiujiu to tears, but she bowed, telling Shouxie she didn't need to apologize. Jiujiu was just worried she was eventually going to be thrown out, but Shouxie had no intention of doing that. Since Jiujiu was her first lady-in-waiting, she just didn't know what to do. Jiujiu was relieved to know she and Hong Qiao would be staying here at the Yaming Palace. The two were worried all the time because Shouxie always seemed anxious. They knew she dyed her hair, but swore to keep that a secret. With things coming to closure, the three enjoyed the paper bubble candy together. As Emperor Gaojun slept, a shadow passing by woke him up. Getting up, he was disturbed to see the bloodied ghostly figures of his mother and Ding Lan. But it was only a nightmare. Wei Qing knew this was an ongoing occurrence, and recommended he see the Raven Consort, otherwise his health might begin to decline. However, Gaojun refused, telling Qing not to tell her. That night, Jiujiu wondered if the emperor would be coming to visit their palace. Despite Shouxie saying there was no need, Jiujiu teased her consort for impatiently waiting for him. Xingxing began his usual squawk, a sign of the emperor's arrival. He started by offering Shouxie food, and he was very glad she liked it, regardless of her prickly nature denying it. He wanted Shouxie to deal with a haunting at the inner palace, particularly detailing a specter which possessed silver hair. There's a willow tree south of Huanyang's palace. The ghost appears nightly beneath a tree while it is in bloom, and ceases to appear once the tree produces down. Shouxie mentions Luan Bingyue, someone Gaojun is familiar with. He was the grandson of Emperor Luan, a maverick who distanced himself from rule and was skilled in sorcery. His master and foster father was a sorcerer named Feng Yixing. It is unclear why, but the master is still alive and Gaojun is looking into the matter. But in the meantime, he'd like her to handle the ghost haunting the willow tree. On his way back, Emperor Gaojun nearly falls over exhausted from his restless nights. Qing offers to watch over him while he sleeps, but Gaojun assures him it's fine since neither his mother nor Ding Lan do anything to harm him. With the emperor now resting, Qing went back to Shouxie's place. He at first thought to tell her about the ghosts plaguing Gaojun's nightmares, but remembering Gaojun said not to, he instead warns her that she'll eventually be trouble for their emperor. Even being the Raven Consort, she's technically not on the registry for the inner palace, and believes there's no reason to show her the same courtesy as the other consorts. The next day, Gaojun continued his research on the Raven Consort. There were still many things he desired to know, such as why she was isolated within the palace. Don Hai then appeared to report Bing Yue's foster father was supposedly somewhere west in the city of Shoujo, but had yet to locate him. So, Wei Qing decided to accept the task of searching as well. In the evening at the willow tree, Shouxie and Ying found a white-haired ghost, but it wasn't Bing Yue. She described the agate pendant the ghost had on her sash to Gaojun, and we learn it's one he'd seen in the Ningguang Hall storehouse. Shouxie asked to see the record so she could ascertain the ghost's name, but that particular storehouse is special access. Only eunuchs assigned to manage it and the Emperor are permitted entry, but he'd make an exception for her to access. Scouting the city of Shoujo, Wei Qing was constantly on edge, asking high and low for the sorcerer. He was eventually able to pay bribe money to learn the sorcerer had relocated to the red light district. Dealing with the people there, though, made him nauseous, and he felt like he was wasting his time, potentially having been misled. Finding a woman passed out in an alleyway gave him the worst flashbacks, nearly making him throw up. A woman who knew his mother then recognized him, and hearing her call him Che-er, he screamed, telling her to stay away as he ran off. Che-er was his original name, and his mother was a store's most beautiful concubine. His father was one of her best customers. There was even talk of him buying her freedom and making her his mistress. But perhaps his father never intended such things, because in the end, nothing came of it. His mother died after stabs in her throat with a blade. The smell of powder, sweat, and the suffocating stench of blood. That's his last memory of this place. As a young child left all on his own, he only had two choices: become a male prostitute or become a eunuch and enter the palace. He refused to be a prostitute, choosing the eunuch life, but his master would teach him both choices were the same. Unable to withstand the humiliation inflicted on him by his master, one night, he ran away. He fell over, sobbing. That's when Gaojun had found him, and he still remembered the warmth of his hand. He was covered in wounds, but Gaojun asked no questions and instead sheltered Wei Qing and appointed him as an attendant. Even now, Gaojun has never once asked him about his past. He abandoned his previous identity, reborn as a eunuch who protected his master. At least, that's what he thought. Staring at his reflection in the blade Gaojun had given him, he was able to calm down and remember who he was. Reaching Gaojun's palace, he suddenly heard a loud thud and opened the doors, horrified to finally see the visible ghostly figures of Gaojun's mother and Ding Lan. With Xingxing's squawking signifying the sign of a visitor, Shouxie opened the doors surprised to see Wei Qing. The two apologized to each other for the interaction they had the other day, and Qing explained the ghost that had been appearing in Gaojun's room every night. They apparently haven't harmed him, yet Gaojun had become increasingly exhausted day by day. He begged Shouxie to save him. Arriving at Ningguang Hall, Shouxie whiffed a strange smell. She decided to deal with the storehouse first, and was taken aback seeing a familiar painting on the wall. The memories from it hurt her, but she pulls away for her objective, the jade pendant of the ghost from the willow tree, Princess Mingzhu. She was the second princess of the last emperor of the Luan dynasty, and was famous for her beauty. She passed at 24 years old. When the imperial guards entered the inner palace, unwilling to die at her enemy's hands, she pierced her own throat with a dagger beneath the willow tree and passed away. She was wearing this pendant at the time. The one thing Shouxie was curious about was why the princess was still unmarried at 24 years old. So, the managing eunuch presented paintings of the 6 individuals said to be exceptionally beautiful, even for the Luan family. And seeing the comb on Mingzhu's painting, but remembering her ghost didn't have it, she thought that must be the key to freeing her soul. However, that glass comb was nowhere in the storehouse. She then observed the painting of Luan Bing Yue, a renowned sorcerer whose beauty was said to be unmatched within the imperial family. But since he distanced himself from rule, there weren't many records of him. However, the eunuch still knew many anecdotes of him. Bing Yue had identified the curse cast upon the empress, and found a lost item for the princesses. On the way out, seeing the kids running at night, Don Hai scares one of them, saying that if they don't return home soon, the Yayo Shen, a god who comes in the night and kidnaps people, would take them away. Shouxie remembered her mother would often say that to her as a child. Reminiscing on her past times, she accidentally bumps into Gaojun without thinking. Learning all the details from Shouxie, Gaojun surmises Princess Mingzhu haunts the willow tree because of her unfortunate death. Shifting the conversation, Gaojun wanted to know why flowers didn't grow in Shouxie's palace, and we learn it's because the goddess tied to the Raven Consort, Niao Lian, hates them, instead only liking peonies. Gaojun had more questions, but Shouxie didn't like him poking his nose into her relationship with the goddess. She then started to poke him about the ghosts appearing in his bedchamber. Gaojun figures the souls of Ding Lan and his mother resent him for not being able to save them, and still, he desires Shouxie not to interfere with them, then leaves for something else important. He met with Shui Yuyang again, going over documents where the Raven Consort was mentioned. There was a man named Bai Yan who wrote the documents, yet no one with that name was listed officially in any documents. Gaojun was fixated because Shouxie originally had no lady-in-waiting or attendants. She lived alone in her palace, with only a single bird for company. He also found it strange that Yuyang didn't seem surprised to hear the Raven Consort's name, since she only revealed it to those close to her. And why, despite being known as a priestess for the goddess Niao Lian, did she not worship her like Yuyang and the rest of the Ministry of Works? Yuyang continued to deflect answering until Gaojun turned back to his original question, demanding to learn who Bai Yan was. So, Yuyang explains Bai Yan is another name for the pin-tailed duck. Though it has black feathers, it is white from the chest up to the eyes. Because its patterning looks like smoke, its name means white smoke. Pulling out the feather from his cap, Yuyang reveals Bai Yan refers to all the Ministry of Works officials from past to present, and that the records of the Raven Consort had been recorded from the very first official of the previous dynasty to him now. It's his duty to keep the secrets of their history buried. He agrees to explain to Gaojun as long as Wei Qing leaves. After getting what he wanted, Gaojun demanded Shouxie show him her historical records. There was one passed down from emperor to emperor that he had, but was missing the truth of the Raven Consort. Yuyang had also mentioned that Shouxie could feel the circling of the stars, and that summer was related to the emperor, while winter was related to the Raven Consort. He wanted to know what that meant. Shouxie cursed Yuyang and asked why Gaojun wanted to know these secrets so badly. He answered that he pitied her. Shouxie got angry, chucking her tea directly at the emperor.
You pity me? How dare you?
Gaojun apologized for his phrasing, but he truly felt sorry for her. Shouxie then went over to the wooden tablets containing the records of the Raven Consort, believing he wouldn't feel pity after learning the truth. Revealing the projection hidden in the tablets, Shouxie explained the previous Raven Consort, Li Niang, showed her this after the first year she had come to the palace. Niao Lian, the goddess, flew west from her secluded palace for 8,001 nights and found this island where juniper trees grow. In this place, she rested her wings. She chose two from among the masses and made one the king of summer and the other the king of winter. The man became the king of summer and presided over rulership. The woman became the king of winter and presided over worship. The title of Summer King was passed down the bloodline through male heirs, but the Winter King was always a young girl chosen at random by the oracles. The Winter King borrows her strength from Niao Lian and passes on her words. For 5 centuries, the nation was ruled peacefully by both kings, but eventually, war broke out. Song, the hot-blooded young man that was the Summer King, killed Sui, the Winter King. The reason was unclear. Perhaps Sui rejected Song's romantic advances, or Song resented her for having an affair with his younger brother. Sui was a young woman of such clear beauty that she practically radiated light from inside her body. Song loved Sui enough to want to kill her. For several centuries after that, the forces of the Winter and Summer Kings clashed. Though several new Summer Kings came and went, a new Winter King was never chosen, and Niao Lian fell silent. The country fell into ruin and dynasties died out as soon as they were born. But one day, an army appeared in the countryside that tore through all opposition as it charged towards the capital. Known as the Silver General for his silver hair, his name was Luan Shi. Not even 30 years old, he was like a young lion and rode with a 12-year-old girl named Shang Chang. He gave her that name since she was a former slave with no name previously. A golden rooster led Luan Shi to Shang Chang, signifying her to have been chosen as the Winter King. so he freed her from her slave masters. She used her power to help Luan Shi, and it didn't take long for him to gain control of the country. He was 28 when he became king. After nearly 1,000 years of separation, the Summer King and Winter King were reunited. Luan Shi knew that the 1,000 years of conflict began because the Winter King had been lost. One king could not persist without the other. Niao Lian's long silence was her punishment against the Summer King for killing the Winter one. But Luan Shi did not allow Shang Cheng to call herself a king. He claimed having 2 kings would spark war once again. Maybe he wanted power all for himself, or perhaps he truly feared another war. No one knows the real reason. Luan Shi ordered the construction of the Yangming Palace and shut away Shang Cheng there. She was cut off from the priests and deprived of any real power, but still named the Raven Consort and counted among the other consorts. Though he never sought her services in bed, he knew the Summer King's love for the Winter King was what started the war. She knew as well, and accepted her confinement, saying nothing. Because she loved Luan Shi, Shang Cheng confined Niao Lian beneath the palace, and became her guardian. Ever since then, the Raven Consort has protected Niao Lian at the Yangming Palace. Luan Shi created a false historical record, and the names of the 2 kings were buried. The Bayan even created a false origin for the Raven Consort, claiming her history would always be a descendant of priestesses who worshipped Niao Lian, because that's what Shang Cheng wanted. Learning the truth, Gaojun now realized his grandfather was only able to take over the Luan dynasty because he never disestablished the Raven Consort. He wasn't happy knowing he was allowed to be emperor, while all Raven Consorts would be confined to the Yangming Palace, and unable to acknowledge their rule as the Winter Kings. He asked why she remained the Raven Consort. However, Shouxie never wanted this. It was Niao Lian who had her talons on her, since she chooses the Raven Consort, the Winter King. The golden rooster simply indicates who she is, and that dreadful night where Shouxie's mother was taken from her was when she was chosen. It was a moonless night, because that's the only time Niao Lian can slip out of the Yangming Palace and wander about as Ye Yo Shen. Niao Lian ties the Winter King to this palace, so she cannot leave. Shouxie cannot even take a single step out of the palace, and if she does, Niao Lian would kill her. There's nothing she can do. She cannot flee. With all the dignity of the Winter King, the Raven Consort shall maintain her silence in order to protect these secrets and prevent unnecessary harm. That's what the previous consort, Li Niang, had taught her. With Shouxie trapped within the Yangming Palace, she must desire nothing, form no close relationships, and never flee. In frustration, she shouted at Gaojun because he could never understand, and she didn't want his pity as she smashed her teacup. Jiujiu went to pick up the broken glass, but that's when Bing Yue possessed her, threatening Jiujiu's life with one of the shards. Bing Yue was making the demands. However, as he dug the shard into Jiujiu's neck, Shouxie unleashed her powers, and one of her hairpins knocked out the shard. She demanded he leave Jiujiu's body and tore him out by force.
If you're unable to cross over to paradise, allow me to send you there.
Shouxie drew one of her flowers and increased its force, while Bing Yue begged her to stop. But before she could deliver the finishing blow, Gaojun stopped her, telling her that was enough. With Wei Qing putting Jiujiu somewhere to rest, Shouxie decided to take on Bing Yue's whole reason for trying to get her help. She figured he wanted her to save Princess Mingzhu, his fiancée. He and the princess had different mothers. He was even trying to be officially adopted by his master, Fang Yixing, and have his name removed from the Luan family registry. This was because of the law against intermarriage. Before the law, as long as 2 people had different mothers, brothers often married sisters, and uncles often married nieces. But starting with the Luan dynasty, it became forbidden. So he tried to give up his family name to be allowed to marry Mingxu. The 2 even had the emperor's blessing, since he was removing his name from the registry. But it all went up in smoke when Bing Yue was captured by Xia's imperial guard, beheaded by the Yandi, and doomed to wander as a ghost. He eventually came to his senses and searched for Mingxu's body. He never found it, but instead her ghost beneath the willow tree looking distant and empty. He tried calling out to her, but she couldn't hear him. Her mind was captivated by something, so he couldn't send her to paradise. His master, Fang Yixing, escaped the pursuers and went into hiding. Even Bing Yue couldn't find him. He tried possessing several sorcerers in an attempt to speak with Mingzhu, but to no avail. Returning to the inner palace, seeing her ghost again, he learned a new Raven Consort had been chosen, and learning further that she was a member of the Luan family, he thought if things went well, he might have been able to strike a deal with Shouxie. Man, I don't know how he thought sneaking around and threatening her lady-in-waiting could have ever been a good idea. Walking into the willow tree, Shouxie brought up the glass comb, and we learned Bingyue gave it to his fiancée as a symbol of their engagement. He was surprised to hear the comb had been lost. With this being the willow tree he proposed to her under, Mingzhu most likely chose to die here because of the memories she shared with him, so it was hard to imagine she would have died without her precious glass comb symbolizing their engagement. However, she wasn't wearing it when she died. She probably didn't want the comb to be on her body, because she believed it would have been plundered by Xia's men. Both her jade pendant and the blade she used to end herself are in the storehouse at Ningguang Hall. It's possible the comb would have also fallen into the hands of her killers. She was probably determined to avoid that. Shouxie figured with the soldiers approaching, Mingzhu probably didn't have time to hide it anywhere, and likely buried it. So, with her and Qing digging at the roots of the willow tree, they were able to find the glass comb. Presenting it to Bingyue, Shouxie believes Mingzhu was unable to depart because she was worried about it. She then blew her powers into the comb, awakening Mingzhu from her trance. She was transformed from her bloody self to the form Bingyue remembered when he placed the comb on her, and the two embraced as they went off to paradise together. Back at Yiming Palace, Jiujiu was recovered to full strength. Shouxie still had something to take care of though, so she implored Jiujiu rest while she headed out alone, even threatening Xing that if he tells anyone where she's going, she'd roast him whole. She ran through Ningguang Palace, using her magic so the guards couldn't perceive her. She opened Gaojun's doors. Seeing him caught staring at the ghostly figures of Ding Lan and his mother, he begged her to stop, calling the ghosts harmless. But still, Shouxie used her powers to summon an arrow and shot right past Gaojun into the door behind him, eliminating the wicked specter and the terrible smell with it. Shouxie explained the two ghosts were trying to protect him from the curse of a beast that had been behind the door. It was likely cast by the Empress Dowager in her final moments, so he'd be tormented even after her death. Man, that woman took being evil on another level. Now seeing Ding Lan and his mother in their peaceful forms, they were able to pass on. Gaojun questioned why she helped him. Was she not angry with him? Did she not hate him? However, her anger was with the former Summer and Winter Kings. And if she let Gaojun die, she felt the two who gave their lives to protect him wouldn't be able to rest in peace. He thanked her, making her flustered as she tried to push away his gratitude. She didn't want anything in return, only for him to stay away from her palace, but he wondered if it was truly impossible for him to help her. She gasped, telling him she didn't want it. Running out, she looked up to the moon, uttering,
That man really is a fool.
As the days passed by, Jiujiu wondered if the Emperor was busy since he hadn't visited a single time since the last incident. Shouxie, being prickly as per usual, claimed she's been at ease with him not being here. She got carried away after hearing Gaojun's request, and forgot her responsibilities as the Raven Consort. These days, she has Jiujiu, Hong Chao, and Wen Ying at her side. She's even obligated to have tea with Huan Yang. She wonders what the previous Raven Consort, Li Niang, would say about this if she were still alive. Niang accepted the Raven Consort's fate and sought nothing, formed no relationships, and spent the rest of her days here at the Yiming Palace alone. Shouxie didn't want to see Gaojun, since every time he spoke her name, she felt oddly unsettled and unable to relax. With Jiujiu presenting Shouxie's hairpin options, she picked the ones Gaojun gave her, since he said they'd go best with this outfit, getting her somewhat flustered. She was serious at Huan Yang's palace, until she lit up seeing the varieties of food presented before her. Shouxie got to munching, holding 2 buns in her hands. While Huan Yang explained Gaojun was busy revising the laws at the moment. He explained it all in a letter he sent to Huan Yang, and told her to pass that on to Shouxie, knowing that if he sent a letter personally to her, she'd probably have burned it without reading it. Huan Yang found spending time with her quite endearing, since Shouxie was the same age as her little sister, and thus thought of her in the same familial way. Arriving back at her place, Gaojun was already waiting for her and noticed she was wearing the hairpins, making Shouxie embarrassed. He explained he'd been working on removing unnecessary laws, in particular, the one that sentenced all the descendants of the Luan to death. That way, Shouxie would no longer have to fear for her life. He then presented 2 fish, one for her and one for him. He wanted the 2 of them to swear an oath between each other as the winter and summer kings. An oath that the 2 of them would not attempt to kill or fight each other, and that when the 2 of them were alone, he'd treat her on equal standing as the winter king and express his respect for all the Raven consorts who came before her. Remembering the day Li Niang died, the respect brought Shouxie to tears, so she offered her hand, accepting the oath. Gaojun wasn't ready to leave though, because there's still one more thing he wanted. He wished to become her friend, to understand her suffering. Shouxie was unsure, since she didn't know exactly what friends did. Neither did Gaojun, by the way, but he thinks friends maybe drink tea together. So she blushed, accepting and smiling as the both of them enjoyed their tea. Staring at the fish she received from Gaojun, she suddenly sensed a visitor at her door. A woman came in, out of breath, desperate, and begging for the Raven consort to perform a resurrection. However, Shouxie explained she could not bring the dead back to life. She was only capable of summoning spirits just once from paradise. Distraught hearing the news, the woman ran out crying and left her silk scarf behind. And bringing the scarf up close, Shouxie could smell the Shangfu incense. It smelt like lilies. The particular incense was burned to mourn loved ones. Next appeared a little eunuch boy named Yi Siha. Jiujiu knew him because he worked at the Feiyan Palace. Noticing his leg was injured, Shouxie decided to treat it. He was apparently struck with a cane by his master for not using proper language. He was originally from Hadan, a village south of Yingzhou by the sea. It's quite a ways away, but many children from there become eunuchs, since fishing alone isn't enough to support an entire family. After his treatment, they get to his request. He sometimes sees a boy standing in the Feiyan Palace, who is about the same age as him. The boy doesn't move, only saying, "I'm sorry," quietly to himself. Siha is the only one who could see him, and when he told his master, the master told him to stop speaking nonsense, which is really why he was beaten. Siha reminded Shouxie of Gaojun, since he was so willing to help another, so she accepted his request to help the ghostly boy. Arriving at the Feiyan Palace, they meet with the swallow consort, Cheng Huangying. Huangying was scared there might be a ghost, and showed Shouxie to where the boy appeared. She quickly pulled out one of her flowers. Seeing him saddened and visibly holding a blue swallow's feather, Shouxie now suspected Siha's master might know something, since he was willing to punish Siha for even mentioning this boy. Before the master and his men could continue flogging Siha, Shouxie used her authority to rescue him, and Kang Lan, his master, bowed in her presence. She inquired more about the dead boy, to which he at first denied, until she intimidated him with her might. Lan explained that the boy had fallen in love with the consort. He died later, but Lan didn't know the particulars, only keeping it a secret since it might have scared the swallow consort. After Shouxie took her leave, Lan could hardly express how shaken he was, having seen a monster in Shouxie's eyes. Having requested Gaojun to look into the boy that died, Don Hai later reported that the eunuch's name was Yuisha, and there was a man named Xian who was close to the boy who still worked within the palace, so she wanted to meet with him. Wandering about, Shouxie spotted Yi Siha crying. His master had apparently kicked him out for mentioning the ghost, and with nowhere to go, she decided to take him in. Otherwise, he'd be assigned to another eunuch and treated harshly if she didn't. They met with Xian at the spot where they saw the ghost of Yuisha. Yuisha was his friend. This all started when he picked up the swallow feather. Since it was beautiful, he offered it to the consort of the Feiyan Palace. She was delighted by it. A bird's feather must have been a novelty to a consort from a distinguished family. After that, Yuisha periodically offered feathers to her, but they never pleased her like they did the first time. Still, in order to please her, Yuisha gathered more and more beautiful feathers. He even began catching birds in traps and plucked them. The incident happened after a blue swallow died in one of his traps. Yan told Yuisha to give it a proper burial, since killing birds is punishable by death. Yuisha didn't listen though, instead presenting the dead bird to the consort with remorse. He was beheaded shortly after that. Yan was so scared since he helped Yuisha set the trap. He had even hoped they executed him before he said anything. Yuisha was his friend, but he felt he could no longer call himself one. Knowing Shouxie had her own regrets, She told Yan to accept it and move on. His suffering and regret was punishment enough. Xia now realized why Yuisha kept apologizing. He wanted to apologize to the dead swallow. Perhaps the tragic death of the bird awakened him to his own shamefulness. Yan then presented the feather from the blue swallow that died back then. He kept it because he felt Yuisha's spirit dwelled within it. Shouxie asked to borrow it and used her magic to summon the swallow, who showed Yuisha the path to the peace of paradise. With him having left, he still called Yan his friend. It's the night of a new moon. The darkness is deep. The Raven Consort becomes unable to contain Miao Lian within her body. While the bird monster wanders throughout the night, the Raven Consort suffers pain as though her body is being torn apart. This is the fate of the Raven Consort, and Li Niang suffered the same. But seeing the face of a mysterious man she for some reason knew as Owl, Shouxie was freed from the pain for now. This man named Feng Xiaoyu, the current apprentice under Feng Yixing, desired to get into the inner palace. So, Yixing decided to help him by getting in touch with a connection he had, and shutting the door, Xiaoyu declared his intention to kill the Raven Consort. Teaching Yi Siha to write reminded Shouxie of the days Li Niang had taught her. It was heartwarming for her. Jiujiu then presented a health concoction for her to drink, which she did despite the terrible taste. Then hearing Siha's stomach rumbling, it was time for a food break. Enjoying the food, the ladies asked about Siha's fishing village, learning they often caught flounders, sharks, and other strange things that washed ashore. There was an inlet where people who fell into the sea would always come. The village elders said the lights were the souls of those who perished at sea. It was quite beautiful. Elsewhere, Gaojun was meeting with Yu Yang to inquire more about the Raven Consort. We learned Yu Yang was childhood friends with the previous Li Niang. He mentions he actually wants to retire, but before he does, Gaojun wants him to talk with Shouxie about Niang. During the nighttime, Shouxie has woken up, receiving a visiting court lady named An Huilan. Huilan has been hearing the voice of Shi Wanlin, a consort she once served from within the water. She begged Shouxie to save her soul. Wanlin was a lovely girl, exceptional at playing the harp. Her smile was like a peony. Her voice was like clear water. Huilan swore she'd help make her the kingdom's greatest consort. When she was grown, she received her own palace as the Magpie Consort. But gazing upon the small bag she kept, Wanlin always sighed. Huilan often scolded her to be more proper, but one day, Wanlin screamed she never wanted to be a consort. Eventually, a eunuch informed Huilan that the emperor would be visiting. She tried to deliver the good news to Wanlin, but her palace was empty, only having found out Wanlin drowned herself. And then, Huilan was assigned to the wash house. Since then, she'd been washing dirty fabrics and she'd hear Wanlin's voice call her name every time a drop of water falls. She believes Wanlin's soul is wandering the lake and asking for help through the water. The next day, Shouxie made her way to the Cheichao Palace, where Huilan was waiting by the lake, although a bit more shriveled up than previously. In order to send Wanlin to paradise, Shouxie needed to gather more information from Huilan. Huilan explained that just before Wanlin entered the inner palace, a thief broke into the mansion. He tried escaping through the window, only to be captured by the guards. He was a young bookseller who frequently visited the mansion. He was a fine young man, but unfortunately beheaded. Huilan was glad he was gone before any news could reach the emperor. Perhaps Wanlin was in love with him, but Huilan considered that a trifling matter. Since it was more important for Wanlin to become a consort, seize power within the inner palace, and help her father, Shouxie suspected there must have been a reason Wanlin drowned herself, demanding Huilan tell the truth. That's when Huilan revealed that in the baggie Wanlin carried was the dirt stained by that young man's blood. Huilan took it from her and scattered it across the ground, crushing it beneath her shoes. She hardened her heart for Wanlin, but Shouxie interjected, saying she didn't love Wanlin at all. This made Huilan hysterical, saying she was the one who taught Wanlin to be a consort who would not embarrass herself at the inner palace. Crying because she believed Wanlin was so ungrateful, Huilan then let off a creepy laugh, acknowledging Wanlin was dead. In truth, she only feared Wanlin's potential grudge and resentment, believing Wanlin is calling her so she can be dragged to the bottom of the lake. But before that happens, She wants Shouxie to save her. However, Shouxie tells her that's not possible, as Huilan's ghostly body passes intangibly through her. Wanlin had already crossed over to paradise. Huilan was the ghost. Last night, she had actually died from lung disease. Realizing this, Huilan became more ghoul-like, questioning where Wanlin's voice was coming from. It wasn't Wanlin's. It was her own. Huilan was afraid of herself for driving Wanlin to her death. Hearing herself say her own name again in the water, Huilan startled herself, falling into the lake, relieved because at least she couldn't hear being submerged in water. Shouxie then placed a sorcerer's spell to trap Huilan in the lake, hoping her time there would eventually save her soul. That's all Shouxie could do, believing Li Niang would have probably found a better way. Later, back at her place, Shouxie feels a sharp pain streak across her. She hurried back to the lake, realizing the spell had been broken, most likely by the owl. Jiujiu then went to the crying woman from earlier who desired to resurrect someone and offered to help with her wish. We turn to some men, enjoying joyous drinks and entertainment from this 5-stringed lute player. That's when one of the men presented another with an ominous cloth mask. It's supposedly possessed by a spirit. The man tried putting it on, and as the girl continued playing the lute, the spirit inside got closer and closer, causing the man to scream until it was lights out. Gaojun heard the report of this occurrence, learning the man had developed a fever and was bedridden, but fortunately, recovered after just a few days, ultimately purchasing the mask since he was into rare antiques. Gaojun wanted to procure the mask next and show it to Shouxie. The day finally came where Shouxie would meet with the Minister of Works, Shui Yuyang. Alone, he quickly scolded her for not doing as Li Niang had taught her. She kept both a lady-in-waiting and a eunuch, but also, he felt no better since the Ministry of Works should also never meet with the Raven Consort. He's only violating this restriction at the request of their emperor. Now finally seeing Shouxie though, he thought she resembled Li Niang so much. She then mentioned Niang told her to rely on him if she ever needed any help. Shouxie even burned the incense Yuyang gave to Niang after her passing, a memory that really touched the minister. Gushing happily at the food before her, the moment was ruined for Shouxie when Gaojun presented the cloth mask. She then put on the mask, and seeing the ghost haunting it caused her to sneeze. Gaojun suspects the dead man was from the Bower workshop, where the palace entertainers and musicians are. Hearing she had no interest in it, Gaojun tried to put the mask away, but she grabbed him to stop, making her flustered. She didn't think she could sleep well now that she'd already seen it. With Shouxie trying to gather more details, Gaojun elaborated that the ghost in the mask turned around when a woman from the Red Sparrow troupe played her lute at a banquet. Shouxie remembered Wen Ying was from that same troupe and decided to hear any details he might have had. This is where he explained the troupe's special 5-string lute player. They unfortunately couldn't call the troupe back since they'd left the capital. So, Gaojun decided he'd have a special lute prepared from their treasure house. Later, meeting at the Aozi Hall, musician Shouchu Yao presents the special lute. It's apparently made with red sandalwood, tortoise's shell, and turban shell mother of pearl. No other instrument existed like this. Shouxie tested the mask to the sound of the lute, which provoked the ghost into moving, causing her to jolt back with its eyes meeting hers. Yao suspected the ghost to be a man he knew named Chifu Shikui. He only lived for playing music, being a master of the 5-string lute. However, he failed to get along with others and was invited to fewer and fewer banquets. Regardless, he tirelessly honed his craft. Day and night, the sound of his lute rang through the Bower workshop. Yao decided to check him out, finding Shikui's body emaciated and fingers bloody while ceaselessly strumming his strings. Yao took the lute from him and trapped Shikui inside his room. Shikui begged and screamed for his instrument back. The next morning, Yao found him quiet because he was already dead, tied to the ceiling. The lute began playing by itself after his funeral, making Yao suspect Shikui had not crossed to paradise. So he burned Shikui's lute, thinking this would allow Shikui to let go, only to now learn his soul remained within the mask. Yao regretted taking the lute from him, but Shouxie tells Yao his choices were correct. Had he not taken the lute, Shikui would have transformed into a demon. You could even say he let Shikui die as a human. But Yao admitted to jealousy, even having felt joy taking the lute away at the time, now begging Shouxie for the answer to give Shouxue's soul salvation. So, she had Yao play the lute, telling him he could not stop until she said so. He played as she cast her magic to bring Shouxue out of the mask. Shouxue reached more and more for the lute as the playing intensified, but reaching it, he found relief and peace as he crossed into golden petals. Shouxie then took both the mask and lute, burning both so that the crossing could finish to completion. Afterwards, Gaojun praised her earnest consideration of saving ghosts, but she felt all she could do was save ghosts, and sometimes she couldn't even do that. Still, she desired to free them. Gaojun loved that she expressed herself more freely than when they had first met. Sometimes when saving ghosts, the living are saved in turn. He tells her she's probably helping more people than she realized. That night, after the 3 eunuchs dropped Shouxie off, on the way back, Dan Hai suddenly smelt blood. They were disturbed, seeing a tree trunk in half and the bloodied corpse of a court lady. This woman, a court lady of the Chao Palace, ran, tripping, screaming as a ghoulish man consumed her. Jiujiu explains the news about a court lady whose throat had been torn out, scared it might have been a mountain lion or stray dogs. However, Shouxie knew there were no mountain lions here, and she'd never seen any stray dogs either. That's when Dan Hai made dog barking sounds to freak Jiujiu out. Walking with Wen Ying, Shouxie wonders if the woman who died was somehow related to the other court lady who had previously visited her, the one who left behind the silk shawl and smelled of Shangfu incense. Ying couldn't get the horrifying sight of the mangled corpse out of his mind, and explained judging by the shape of the wounds, her flesh was undoubtedly torn by teeth. He suspected it was human teeth. Playing Go, Gaojun learned more about the Raven Consort from Yu Yang. Li Niang was chosen at the age of 14, inheriting the role at 22 years old, while Shouxie was chosen at the age of 6, inheriting the role at 14. For some reason, Raven Consorts took their roles 8 years after being chosen, when the previous one would die. Yu Yang explained the number 8 to be holy, and Li Niang knew her death was coming. That's why she taught Shouxie everything she could. It was the fate of the Raven Consort, a fate Gaojun wished to free Shouxie from. With her arrival, Yu Yang offered Shouxie to play against the Emperor, but she felt she was no match for him. Li Niang apparently taught her how to play, but Shouxie never won, bringing back fond memories to Yu Yang, since he often played against Niang who never held back. Shifting the conversation, with Yu Yang heading for retirement soon, Gaojun told him to tell Shouxie everything he knew about Niang before he left, and she enjoyed the idea. Losing to Gaojun even with handicap got Shouxie frustrated, so he thought to cheer her up with treats, which the two of them shared together. She thought it was funny, never having seen him eat. She could hardly tell he was an emperor enjoying the snacks. With her having food on her face, Gaojun wiped it off, telling her she was quite the handful. Wei Qing arrives, and the topic of conversation shifts back to the Shangfu incense, something Gaojun knew the magpie consort smelled like constantly these days. She hadn't been feeling well since her brother fell from a horse and died. She's been depressed and bedridden ever since. He thinks he should maybe send her home. With the Emperor taking his leave, Yu Yang appeared, whispering to Shouxie that she shouldn't become any friendlier with Gaojun. Desire breeds suffering, and if she were to be consumed by it, that's when the monster within her would be born. He warned her to heed his words. Investigating the shawl from earlier, Shouxie remembered the woman who came to visit her that one night never bowed to her. That's when she figured it must have been the magpie consort. Wen Ying then returned from an investigation of the magpie's palace that Shouxie had sent him on. Apparently, the magpie consort had been bedridden for the past several months. A few of her ladies-in-waiting are caring for her, but her court ladies and eunuchs are not allowed near her. However, she prefers one of her eunuchs and keeps only him by her side. Ying described the eunuch to Hong Chao, who captured his likeness. Shouxie gasped, witnessing the image of the man she knew as Owl. She learned his name was Feng Xiaoyu, and that the magpie consort began increasingly avoiding other people upon his arrival, and occasionally, strange sounds of slurping and groans started coming from her room. Hearing this, Shouxie was shaken, but commanded Ying to continue looking into this and return by nightfall. By herself, Shouxie was frightened by the idea that the owl was here to kill her. Outside, Huan Yang arrived. She came to visit Shouxie with plenty of treats. Seeing how down Shouxie was, she tried to cheer her up, letting Shouxie know she could depend on her. Shouxie then recalled the previous Raven Consort's words.
You're the one who must live this life. Acquire knowledge, use your wits. No one but you can walk your path.
Huan Yang challenged this, asking if it was truly impossible for herself, anyone at the palace, or His Majesty to walk that path with her. Afterwards, Shouxie stared at the fish trinket Gaojun gave her, thinking of when he told her he wanted to become her friend, how he wanted to understand her suffering. Sneaking around the Chao Palace, Wen Ying was caught by Xiao Yu and taken out. Shouxie was getting worried because Ying hadn't returned yet and left her palace to go look for him. She stumbled and happened to find Gaojun and Wei Qing, explaining Ying hadn't returned yet, and the eunuch who snuck into the palace probably had intentions to kill her, making everyone gasp. Shouxie felt ashamed, thinking she should have stopped Ying and instead gone herself. But she was afraid, and that's why she allowed him to go. Since she started keeping people around, she's become afraid of dying, uttering,
I've become weak.
She felt this shouldn't have happened. She wasn't supposed to rely on others and drag them into her business. However, Gaojun assured her that weakness was fine, and not to forget that she was a 16-year-old girl, and that it wasn't so bad to have her depend on them. The group then went to the Chao Palace together, and inside the magpie consort's room, they could smell the Shangfu incense mixed with something horrid. Shouxie gasped, seeing Xiao Yu's face as he let off a wicked smirk. Xiao Yu didn't even address the Emperor calling him, instead exiting the room. Shouxie then presented the shawl to the magpie consort, Qin Huiyao, and demanded she return Wen Ying. Huiyao acknowledged Shouxie as the one who couldn't grant her wish, but when Xiao Yu appeared, he did. Huiyao then recounted the times with her and her brother. They had no other siblings, and he was always looking out for her. Compared to his schoolmates, he was quite exceptional, and to her, he was the greatest man in the world. Full of life, beautiful, and self-assured. She loved him dearly. She entered the inner palace for his sake, so that he could become an official someday. Then, when Gaojun brought up how he died, Huiyao became hysterical, saying he couldn't possibly be dead. She had gone to the Raven Consort for help, but learning Shouxie couldn't bring him back, she lost all hope. Huiyao even considered following her brother in death. That's when Xiao Yu appeared. He told requesting a lock of her brother's hair from their father. She wept. But with that, Xiao Yu was able to bring him back. Shouxie at first asked where Huiyao's brother was, but then realized there was no need, since she could smell him. Huiyao tried telling the Emperor it really was her brother. His face, his body. She swore she'd never let something like this happen again. But Gaojun wasn't sure what this meant yet. The stench was horrid in the room. Seeing Wen Ying, Shouxie accidentally knocked over a bucket of strange liquid, making it over to him. He woke up perfectly fine, but as the lantern lit the room, we learned the buckets contained blood. And when Huiyao's brother came from behind the curtain, he tried to get a bite out of Shouxie. The eunuchs started to fend him off, with Dan Hai kicking him away. However, Huiyao came to his side, telling her brother it was all right, unwrapping her arm so he could feed. She explained Xiao Yu told her to feed him blood, otherwise he'd revert back into a clump of dirt. But her brother didn't seem to like animal blood much. She then explained one night her brother had gone on a rampage and eaten one of her court ladies. She was willing to accept the blame to protect her dear brother. Shouxie then broke the bad news. This wasn't her brother. Xiao Yu merely created a clay doll. No matter how long she allowed him to feed, this thing would never really be him. Huiyao must have known deep inside that this wasn't the brother she's loved ever since she was a child. However, she still denied it, even looking at him face to face, only to get chomped right in the neck, meeting her demise. Shouxie then conjured a magic arrow, and piercing the doll, she quickly destroyed it. Reconvening at the Meiying Palace, Dan Hai reported he had searched all of Chao Palace with no sign of Xiao Yu whatsoever. He apparently didn't even have his own room. Nobody ever saw him sleep or eat. Outside, Gaojun promised they'd find Xiao Yu, and wanted Shouxie to stay in her palace. They both had their regrets, Gaojun knew Hui Yao was upset, but he didn't send her home soon enough. Shouxie had flatly turned her down, without being able to understand and acknowledge her grief. They both wished they had done something different. On his way out, Gaojun felt something was wrong, so he turned back. He was right, because Shouxie went out to the forest by herself, calling out to Xiao Yu because she didn't want anyone else to get involved. He then suddenly appeared atop a tree branch, revealing this wasn't his real self, but merely a vessel, much like her body was a vessel to the Raven. She quickly fired the first shot, learning it had no effect since they needed to use their sacred weapons. She had no idea what he meant, but knew she should be afraid of him. He explained he came from the Palace of Seclusion, a land far across the sea where the gods are said to live, and he is the executioner of the palace. His sacred weapon, Simalu, finally came to his side, originally belonging to Niao Lian, who resided inside of Shouxie. Xiao Yu had been watching over her for a long time, since intervening with this island was forbidden. Those who are banished from the Palace of Seclusion are sent here. There was nothing he could do, even being the Raven's brother. The two were born when a bubble of the sea was split in two. He was made the executioner, and the Raven was made responsible for guiding the spirits of the dead who drifted in on the currents and wind. However, the Raven committed a sin. Tempted by the dead, she sent a soul back and revived it. But a short while ago, he sensed the power of the Raven when it ran wild inside of Shouxie. He felt so nostalgic, he couldn't bear it. So he sent Simalu in his vessel from the palace, having patiently waited for over 1,000 years. Pulling out a feather from the bird that turned into a blade, he desired to end his sister's suffering. He dove right at Shouxie, getting blocked by none other than Gaojun. The two men then continued their duel, and even with Xiao Yu having the edge, Gaojun was able to find an opening, which meant nothing, since Xiao Yu wasn't affected by mortal weapons. Xiao Yu then knocked the Emperor's sword away, going for the finishing strike, but Shouxie knocked him away, giving an opportunity for Wei Qing to jump in as well. Xiao Yu tried to strike again, only to get shot away by Dan Hai and Wen Ying. Qing then made a fierce stab, knocking Xiao Yu's body against a tree, and seeing him crack apart, we learn his current vessel was actually a clay doll. He actually didn't even want to kill Shouxie, but had no choice, saying if there was anyone to blame, they should blame Xiang Cheng, the first Raven Consort. She was the one who trapped the Raven inside her. The truth was, she offered up herself and the numerous women who'd come after as vessels, and sealed the Raven so she couldn't escape. Cheng was the one Xiao Yu truly hated. Sealing souls in vessels was a forbidden technique to the gods, and he explained that because of it, the Raven was tearing Shouxie's soul apart every new moon trying to escape. She's already halfway become the Raven. Shang Cheng fed the Raven flowers continuously. They are a poison that intoxicates the gods. Shouxie was shocked that the flowers she'd been offering to Niao Lian were poison, and that the power overflowing from her was her scream of rage and pain. As the executioner, Xiao Yu had come to fulfill his duty. Going for a direct swing, Gaojun pulled Shouxie away and Xingxing appeared, trying to get into the fight too. This is when Shouxie realized what Xingxing was, and called out to him. Plucking a feather that became a golden arrow, she threw a barrage of them until Xiao Yu's doll was completely destroyed. She was relieved the owl was finally gone, thinking he must have uttered his sister's real name in the end. She was frantic that Gaojun was wounded, but learning it wasn't deep, she was glad as she passed out. In her dream, she was haunted with the words of Xiao Yu reminding her Shang Cheng doomed all future Raven vessels to the fate of having Niao Lian within them. She questioned who she was, telling the voices to shut up. Waking up to Gaojun at her bedside, he was still injured but on his way to recovery. Seeing her awake, Jiujiu ran to Shouxie's side, crying in relief that she was all right. Outside, Gaojun presented Shouxie a new fish he carved himself. She hadn't been wearing the other one he gave her, since she was afraid she'd lose it. Although, a part of it broke when he fell during the fight last night. He wanted to make a new one, but Shouxie kept it anyway, tying it to her sash, thinking it was better that it's slightly damaged, joking that otherwise it'd surely escape. With the Emperor taking his leave, Xingxing returned, not really looking to hear Shouxie thank him for saving her life, but instead to cuddle up with Jiujiu and Siha. Seeing the empty Cheichao palace, Gaojun and Huanyang were there to mourn the magpie consort. He wanted Huan Yang to look after his other consorts, not wanting this to happen ever again. She would always, but was more worried about him. He felt Hui Yao's father must surely resent him, losing not only his son, but his daughter as well. He felt their father must be filled with suffering and rage. The flames of emotion eventually grow into an inferno, and Gaojun hates that he cannot wholeheartedly mourn the death of Hui Yao. Huan Yang thought he was just like Shouxie, trying to take everything on by himself. Later that night, Wei Qing brought Gaojun a report of how Xiaoyu got into the palace. His master, Fang Yijing, had been secretly exchanging letters with someone they all knew. They frantically searched, not finding the man anywhere. Yu Yang then appeared at Shouxie's palace for a request. She was shocked because only the emperor and eunuchs were allowed to enter this place. So why was he here? He explained he was honoring his agreement to tell her about Li Niang before his retirement. So she invited him in. This was his first time inside the Yangming Palace. The place. Niang lived all alone. Shouxie burned the last piece of incense that was a gift from Yu Yang to Niang as they chatted over a game of Go. He remarked that smells can resurrect past memories better than anything else. Remembering the days he played with Niang in their childhood, she was no different from any other girl then. She was carefree, cheerful, smart, and she hated to lose. Loved by her family and surrounded by friends, solitude was a foreign concept to her, at least until the day she was chosen by Niao Lian. That was the last time he saw her. With Shouxie realizing she was no match for Yu Yang, he chuckled because she insisted on playing with no handicap. She remembered Niang to be the same, smiling whenever Shouxie told her not to hold back. After the incense finished burning, she asked if Yu Yang was going to draw the blade beneath his robes. She knew he came to kill her. He then drew it, and going for the stab, Shouxie shuddered, surprised to see Gaojun had stopped him. Yu Yang was the one who snuck Xiaoyu into the inner palace. He knew Xiaoyu's goal was to kill the Raven Consort. Gaojun kept scolding the man, but Shouxie told him to stop. Yu Yang was upset over all the affection Gaojun had for her. Gaojun kept asking Yu Yang why he was doing this, but Yu Yang asked what made him think he had any goodwill towards Shouxie. In Yu Yang's mind, Shouxie had a eunuch and a lady-in-waiting to serve her. Even Gaojun, Shouxie is blessed. The previous emperor never concerned himself with Li Niang. He wished Niang had an emperor who cared about her. He was saddened because she was always alone. Gaojun's answer to this was that Niang had Shouxie. She taught Shouxie to write, showed her the way of things, and treated her with care. One can tell just by looking at Shouxie how much Li Niang poured into her. Gaojun saw Shouxie as Niang's salvation. This realization brought Yu Yang to tears, and Gaojun took pity on him, allowing his retirement as long as he left and said nothing. Seeing Gaojun's bandages came undone, Shouxie patched him back up. The two talked about how Yu Yang had entered the Ministry of Works for Niang's sake. Shouxie believes he wanted to research the Raven Consort so he could set her free. He hated Shouxie because he loved Niang. Gaojun asked if she would have accepted her death, and she thinks the old her would have. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Gaojun's face. She saw him calling her name. He once told her he wished to be friends and that he wanted to understand her pain. Those words were her only salvation. After patching him up, he called her clumsy, making her pout. She tried to walk away, but he stopped her, asking if he could sleep over tonight, and claims to have never slept better than he did here. He's also been having trouble sleeping lately. She sat by his side and told him to burn a silk feather for the magpie consort. Spend a little time mourning her, and she'd do the same. She then began massaging his hand, because that's what Niang used to do for her when she had trouble sleeping. He really enjoyed the warmth of her hands. The next day, she burned the silk incense with hopes to guide Hui Yao to paradise. She then went over to Huan Yang's to spend time, eating so fast she nearly choked. Over at Gaojun's, they see his wound is closing up, but it has strange marks. Gaojun tells Qing to disregard it, but if anything strange happens, he'd let him know. He later meets with the magpie consort's father, Qin Xiaojing. Xiaojing apologizes for his daughter. However, Gaojun tells him he need only mourn for his children and take care of his wife. Xiaojing then explains he received a letter from the Raven Consort, telling him the emperor burned a silk feather to mourn Hui Yao's soul, so she would not lose her way. He thought Gaojun was kind, and seeing him cry, The father was honored that the emperor would mourn for his family. That night, Xing couldn't sleep, so Siha decided to tell the bird about the sea.
Souls are beautiful things. They twinkle in the darkness like pale, white stars. The raven lives in the night.
Hearing a voice call out, "Raven," Shouxie found herself alone with Gaojun, where an owl's wing flapped translucently on his arm as the two lovers held hands. At the bottom of the sea, lying in the silence of the night.
I wait for the day I can be myself again. Wow, what an ominous end to the series! Is Gaojun the new owl vessel? Will he find true love with the Raven Consort? Subscribe to the channel, and hopefully we find out in the second season. For now though, watch this next video. It's me, Bunmi.
And ComfyTea.
We'll see you all in the next one.